Okay, welcome back. Let's get started. So today we're going to build a couple of iPhone applications, or iPad, whichever one you prefer. And I'm going to run through step by step. We're going to start with Hello World. Then I'm going to go through and kind of preview some different project types. Not too much coding today. Instead, we're going to cut and paste and borrow and steal and not have to worry about actually knowing Objective-C, which is good for those people who are struggling in the Objective-C class already. So this is the lecture 1 that I had started last time, and I believe I ended probably at this slide, or very close to it. I'm not going to go through a whole preview of what I did last time, so we'll just pick up where I left off. So if you have your computer with you and you have Xcode installed, you can follow along. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my Xcode icon here that I put in my taskbar. Unfortunately for me, I have another Windows up here, Windows XP Parallels actually, so I can run the lecture and I can kind of follow both simultaneously because I have like a computer and a computer here, which is nice. So what we're going to do is flip back here and go through the instructions and kind of see if we can build a couple projects today. So you're presented with this little welcome screen. So what we want to do is create a new project, connect to our repository, and learn about using Xcode, and then go to Apple's portal. Well, we don't have to. We can go ahead and pick and create a project type. So, all that said and done. Welcome to Xcode. So, this screen is going to go away for you. If you click on this little button down here, it says show this window when Xcode launches. The window will go away. Don't click that, because then you won't be able to use this window. If that window has gone away and when you open up Xcode, you are presented with nothing. I'm going to close the window for a second. You're presented with this, Xcode. Well, alright, you get this. Then you're going to go up to Xcode menu that's on the top of the screen if you're new to Macs. Some people are actually, so that's why I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit. You can go File, New, Project. And if you do that, you're going to the screen that other screen is going to go to. So the other screen is going to take you to this screen. Actually, it's probably going to look like that for you. But I'm going to close this and show you how we're going to get there in a second. So I'm going to cancel. I'm going to close Xcode and bring it back up again. I got to that screen by saying create a new project. So go ahead and select the topic that's on the top. The other things we can do is we can connect to repositories and learn about Xcode. Actually, there's some videos and some reading and stuff. It'll take you to the Apple website for Xcode. Or go to the developer portal where you downloaded Xcode from. Why they put that still on there, I don't know, but you might want to get other tools and stuff. So the menu option you're going to use the most is this one right here. Just click on it. If you click on it, it brings you to that screen we were just at a few minutes ago. So you can get to that screen by going to File, New Project. So, alright, so now I'm at the screen I want to be at, and hopefully you are too. And I'm looking at the window, and the classic mistake here is to create the wrong project type. Xcode allows you to create OS X applications, and this is where we were at earlier in the previous class when we talked about Objective-C, and we had Mac applications. We don't want to do that one. For this particular class, we're going to be up at the top. If you click on the big old box up here, it gives you everything. If you click on down here, you see the applications, the frameworks, others, all broken out into the smaller categories. So either click on the top or click on Applications because we're interested in creating an application. So go ahead and click on that button. For the first Hello World, we're going to create a single view application. But before we go there, I'm going to kind of talk about the rest of them. We're also going to look at the tabbed application today as another project type. These are templates for different types of projects that we can create. We can also create a utility application if we want, or without a template at all. If we don't want to use a template, we can create an empty application. We want to use a single view because then we're going to get a single XML file with a single view, with a single everything. And what it's going to end up happening is it makes it more automated for us. And so go ahead and click this one. And it says 1 on it because what we're doing is we're creating a one-view application. You can read about the description on the bottom here, but go ahead and click on Next. And you have to give it a product name, and as I mentioned in the previous class, it means the same thing as the iOS stuff, excuse me, as the Mac stuff. It's the name of your project. So let's just call this Hello World. So your project name is anything you want to call the project, which is going to be your application name, which is your product in the end. Company identifier is sort of like the package. It's going to be, usually it's a package address, so it's usually your URL in reverse order. So I just put in edu.itu. Whatever you put in here, you can put the word default in here if you want. Whatever you put in here is going to come up automatically the next time you do this, so you don't have to keep remembering. So this is pretty generic. I could go .examples or something, but I'll just leave that alone. On the bottom, you can leave class prefix alone. You don't have to worry about it. You can also select if you don't want to create a device that's universal for all mobile device families that Apple owns. You can select iPad or iPhone. I'm going to put it on universal because I'm not going to tie myself. Actually, let me put it on iPhone. I'm going to put it on iPhone. You can put it on, and I'll put it on universal. I'll put it on universal. So there's some options on the bottom. Using storyboards. Let's not select anything right now because some people, actually, a vote of hands, how many people have something that's older than 4.3? You guys have, well, you have, what do you have? Okay, you don't have this option. Your screen does not have use story. It doesn't have automatic reference counting. It doesn't have text stasis. So we're going to do something that's going to be hopefully compatible with yours. It should be very close. My interface is going to look slightly different than yours, but the features are the same. So you might have to hunt around a little bit is what I'm saying. Because in the older version, and I'll try and tell you if I can remember, it was a couple months ago since the last time I used the older version, so I'll try and remember. But what is this stuff? This stuff was added to the current version of Xcode starting with 4.3x, so it was basically based on the more current version. And storyboards. So remember web development. I don't know if anyone's ever done web development. There's this concept of the storyboard, which is a scene where if you're developing a website as a classic example, you put together a storyboard. Sometimes you put together a wireframe. And sometimes people consider them the same thing. Usually I think the wireframe is more like this screen goes to this screen that goes to that screen that goes to this screen. It's got the navigational components of it, which is interesting because Apple's got storyboard and wireframe all into one and they're calling it storyboard. So you've got the navigation that goes from a main screen, like your main website as an example, to another screen, like about my company, to my products, to purchasing. And then you have the screens. So when you put together a storyboard, it gives the user or gives the developer, the audience, or whoever you're building the site for, an impression about what you're building. It describes what screens you have and how the screens are going to be related and how the navigation is going to work and all of the features that are going to be contained without actually writing it. It's kind of like in the old days. You ever seen those things that they were called flip cards, flipboards? And people used to do cartoons this way. They used to flip them up. You could see a character move and stuff. That's where this concept sort of came from originally. And it's a way of documenting your design, but it's also a way of designing. So you put together a storyboard if you're a web person, or if you're, some programmers do this too, actually. iPhone people do it as well. And it gives you the multiple interface view, or the view of the multiple interfaces and the multiple screens, and it ties everything together for you. When we're done with Hello World, I'm going to create Hello World with the storyboard, and we'll see what happens with that. But in our particular case, we're not going to use the storyboard unless, hold on one second, let me just make sure my example here doesn't want us to use storyboard. Well, it's going to have us use a storyboard. I'm going to select, hopefully you haven't pressed return yet. I'm going to select the storyboard because the example actually uses two separate screens. Did you guys already do it? Okay, back up. Did you already do it? Okay, I won't use storyboard. Actually, I'm not going to use storyboard. I won't use the storyboard. Now, how many people want to use storyboard? I don't know. I just forget. I'm going to get myself into trouble. I'm going to get myself into trouble by not using it because the PowerPoint that goes through the steps that I'm going to try and mimic for you uses it. So, but I'm not going to use it. I don't have to use it. I'm not using it. It's a single view application. What do I need a storyboard for? It's a single view. It's one view. Okay, so we'll see how that works. So I'm going to press next. And the next screen that's going to ask me is going to say, where do I want to save this? I'm going to put it on the desktop. If you want, you can create a workspace directory. You can put it in your home directory. I'd put it on the desktop because I throw them away. Because I'm just showing you stuff and I'm not going to keep it. You may not necessarily want to put everything on your desktop. If you've never owned a Mac before, the more stuff you put on your desktop, the slower your computer actually runs. So I highly discourage doing this if you're going to keep the project. If you're going to throw it away, no problem. But I'm going to put it on the desktop. I'm going to press create. On the bottom, before I do that, I'll just let you know, on the bottom of the screen here, it says create local Git repository for this project. If you were working in a team environment in the real world, you'd want to create a repository for source code versioning. And the repository would keep track of all the changes that you made and all the different versions of the project and basically does management for you automatically. You don't need to do that. It's going to complicate things, so you don't necessarily have to worry about that. The other options that we didn't select, if I were to go back to the other screen, there was two more options. There was Storyboard that I talked about, and I forgot to talk about reference counting, and the other one underneath it is test cases. Test cases underneath it. Test cases is JUnit, the same feature. If you took the Android class, the same feature that you have with Android application development to automatically create unit testing. In JUnit, we had a project on that actually. One of the assignments had to create test cases and stuff. Is also on the iPhone platform, so it's all the same features supported. The other one was auto reference counting, which we're not going to do on this project, and hopefully we won't get in trouble with it because I think I'm supposed to select that one as well. But essentially what that means is I don't have to keep track of the memory usage, the allocation and the deallocation. That if I do auto reference counting, and I'll talk about this as we go through the class a little bit more, I have an entire lecture on memory. But for today's purposes, just take it for granted that it's memory related. Do we want Xcode to keep account of what's still being accessed in memory and what's garbage? Or do we want to do it ourselves? And if we do it ourselves, then we essentially can automate things a little bit more, not have to worry about releasing memory. In the iPhone platform, you actually have to create memory, you allocate memory, and then you deallocate memory. So you allocate and then you release, allocate and release. If you're not taking the Objective-C class, that's not going to make any sense probably, but it's kind of like pointers from C++ if you're familiar with that concept. When you write new and delete, new and delete. We don't actually get a memory platform, memory module. We have to allocate. And there's a heavy use of pointers, actually, in Objective-C, but it's not called pointers. So we allocate, we initialize, then we release, we drain. So it's dynamic memory allocation because everything in Objective-C and the iPhone platform runs this way. It's dynamically allocated. So until you create the object doesn't exist. The object is typed dynamically, it's executed dynamically. So in order to do that, you have to let the programmer have full control over the memory. So in order to actually run a program, you have to allocate memory, then you have to deallocate it, allocate it, deallocate it. So I didn't select that, so I don't have it automatically. I might actually have to start over on this if my example is going to take advantage of that, depending upon which code I'm going to have to cut and paste, because I don't really like typing. But we'll see what happens. In this particular case, I'm going to press create here to create the project on my desktop. And I'm going to be presented with a directory structure. It says no editor. That's fine. On the left-hand side, oh, there it goes. It takes a few minutes. It takes a few minutes to load. I'll give you a little tour. I gave you a little tour last time, but let me just tell you a few things about the interface. All the files that we're going to be using are going to be over here. So we have app delegate. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. A view controller and view controller to XIB. So you don't have to do this, but I'm going to do it in a few minutes from now. The XIB is like the XML interface in the Android platform. XIB, well, IB stands for Interface Builder. X is for Xcode. So it's Xcode Interface Builder. where you're dragging and dropping items and you're putting it on the canvas, and here's the canvas right here. And when you drop and drag, then you can associate events and things with this canvas. So at this point, it's not a bad idea to run the program to make sure you have a working project. So I'm just going to run it real quick. This is kind of a bad habit I have. I just want to run it just to make sure that nothing messed up with my project creation. I had enough room, everything. Oh, this is running. Looks like I've got an iPad simulator on here. So I'm actually going to change it now to the iPhone simulator. And I'm going to kill this as soon as it loads up because I got an iPad. Nothing's going to show up on the screen. It's just going to be a blank window. There we go. In fact, I have the blank window, so it looked like it was successful. If I click on this blank window that I'm going to get, I'm going to see the iOS simulator showing up in the taskbar. There's a way of killing it actually with a command key, or you can actually just go quit. So you can click on the command and go Q, and it kills it for you. Or you can click on quit, and it quits. So it depends on whether you're a key person or whether you're a menu person. I'm a menu person actually.
Did you forget the force click?
I did.
It's the option button.
Yeah, it's the option button. You just press the option button down and it adds it to the menu. Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. Everybody should know that. Alright, so I'm going to go back to the template here just to make sure that I'm following the steps, because some of you guys who don't have computers with you are probably going to try and do this, I hope, on your own. So we created the single view application. Good. We set the project type, the identifier. This example wanted us to do the automatic reference counting, and it wanted us to do the storyboards. So we'll see what kind of trouble we get into with this. And include test cases, we'll leave that one unchecked. If I end up with problems with the memory, I don't want to show you memory today, so if that is a problem, I'll restart the project. But I think I'm going to get away with it. I think it'll be just fine. So source control, this is the get. So you can go ahead and read through the PowerPoint. This is slide number 10. It's going to talk about all the little things I sort of just skipped through a few minutes ago in terms of the other features that we are not using right now that we're going to talk about later. So we have the main screen up, and the first thing we do is, where do we start? So we're going to build a default project. Well, after you build it, you're going to run it. I ran it. Press Command Q to end the simulator. End it. Let's talk about, this is why I like the PowerPoint, because it keeps me on track with things I should tell you. Let's talk about Model View Controller and see how it works with the sample projects. So in Xcode, let me bring that back up here. You can actually tell something about the Model View Controller by the selection of the projects, the project files that are included. Okay, so first of all, each file set is an object, and the object comes in a pair. We have a .h and a .m file that's associated that controls the object that we're working with. And we have 3 sets of objects: model, view, and controller. So that's where the MVC comes from. So technically, the model view controller here, by definition, the MVC is the background of iOS programming. Well, it's actually traditional object orientation, and it comes from Smalltalk, which is the language Objective-C comes from. So that's where it got inherited from. The model holds the data. Should know nothing of the interface. It just is responsible for holding data. In our sample, the app delegate is the view controller. Well, we don't have any data in here. We just have the app. We just have the controller and the view. So bad example. But we have files that are objects that hold the data. Some people use the app delegate for the data, actually. We have the view. The view is kind of interesting. In here we have the view controller, so it's really the controller for the view, and the app delegate in our sample is going to be the view. But normally when we create this, we would have files that we would create for the program that would hold our data. So they would be like person object and student object and all of the different objects that we were using in terms of our data manipulation. So when we write a regular application without using iPhone, we always have the data that's associated with the application, which is the functionality that we're working with. We have the interface, the GUI, to the application, and then we have the controlling of the GUI. So these are the three different parts that make up the model view controller. So the view is the code for getting data in and out of the view. The view is what we're getting in that interface builder. That's the window. So it deals with the items like buttons, lists, tables. So the view controller is what's going to control the view in our sample project. We're always going to get app delegates. We're always going to get view controllers. You have that in your 3.4, right? Do you have 3 sets or just 2? You don't have anything?
I'm not.
On the left-hand side of the screen, you should have this window now. It should be there. In your version, it's not compact like this. It's all separated out into separate windows. So what they did is, in this version as well, is they put it all together. So instead of like this being a separate window and that being a separate window, your interface builder is a menu option up here in your version. So the interface is going to look slightly different. What I need to do is get an old system that has 3 point something on it, but you know, I can't support all these different versions. Anyway, so the controller, it keeps the model objects and the view objects in sync. So the view is the window, the code for getting it in and out deals with buttons. The view controller controls the view. The model is the app delegate or the other files that you're going to add, class files that you're going to add to the project that's going to represent the data, the processing, the true application is the data if you think about it. You know, it's the objects that you're creating and the data that you're using. So app delegate, here's our app delegate. So the app delegate is essentially so I've got it backwards. The app delegate is the controller. It's not the data, so erase that. So it links the buttons. Well, actually, here's the other interesting thing. So this is the old way. So the file set changed slightly because with the storyboards, we have different views now. And the naming and in the old days, you used to actually have to add your own class files, and that was the data, which is why I was thinking, I was actually kind of thinking back at that going, well, it used to be the app delegate, but not really. It wasn't really the app delegate. All right, so app delegate, we have our 2 sets. We have the .h and we have the .m. It's the controller of the app. It links the buttons, the labels, the views, everything together. The .h files are the headers, the .m's are the implementation. So we have an implementation of an interface. So we create the interface, which is, hey, we have a button. And then we create an implementation of the interface to say, hey, button, when you click on it, do this. Or when you do, when you scroll to the left, do that. So it's the terminology. So Storyboard, it's new to iOS 5 and the 4.3, because you have to have 4.3 something to work with the iOS 5. It's graphically laid out your application before you code it, which is essentially what I was telling you before. You're graphically showing what the application is going to look like through a storyboard, through screens. Makes it easy to follow the flow of the application. And you're advised to use storyboard going forward because eventually the XIB files are going to go away. So if you're using the storyboard, you have a file in here called storyboard. So because the person who has 4.3 is not able to see any of this, I'm going to go ahead and close this project and create another one that uses the storyboard. Because this is actually killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So instead of me having to show you the storyboard after I finish this, we created a project without the storyboard to see what it looked like, and we've been looking at it. And the difference is we have XIB files. Separate XIB files with separate controllers, which not necessarily the pattern that we're going to follow with all of the examples in this course. So it's, after thinking about it, it's probably best to go through the drill and do the storyboards now as well. So kill a couple birds here. So don't worry about it. You can always delete the files. So that's why I put it on the desktop. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this project. I'm going to recreate it. We haven't done anything with it yet, so you don't have to worry about it. So you're getting practice creating files as well. You're getting projects. So go ahead and do this if you want to follow along with the storyboard. So go ahead and delete the project. Just close out of Xcode. Drag it to the, you don't have to delete, you can leave it if you want. I'm going to create here, all I'm going to do is create the same project over again, but I'm going to click those buttons now. So I'm going to click on single view. And I'm going to go next. And I'm going to put the same name in because I just deleted that project. I'm going to call it Hello World. And then I'm going to click on use storyboards and use automatic reference counting. So, and go next. And if you don't have a computer with you and you don't have this version, follow along because it's the same thing, but you're using the XIBs instead of the storyboard. Because here's what we have now. We have two storyboards. So remember before, so that's why I say it's killing two birds with one stone because I have to show you the differences anyway. Remember before we had the universal project type, and up here I switched it. I said iPhone, iPad, and I still like the iPhone better. But we only had one XIB file, and one XIB file showed me a little screen, right? Just a little thing out there, and it didn't really allow me to, kind of think of the big picture in terms of what if I was creating an iPad application versus an iPhone application. I'm going to have the screen laid out a little bit differently. So now if you look at the screen here, if I've done the storyboards, now, and some people say the reason why the storyboards came around is because it puts everything together for you automatically. So instead of having tons of little XIB files, you have one file. It's called the storyboard. So I have a storyboard for the iPhone, and I have a storyboard for the iPad. And so I can have two separate interfaces for the same identical application. I can package the application up, put it in the Apple Store, and the person who has an iPhone can download it, the person who has an iPad that can download it, and they're going to have two different interfaces. Nice. Out of one application. Never, in the old days, we had one interface. It worked on both devices. But now I can customize what it looks like. All right, so, which is kind of like why I want to use the storyboard, actually, because that's kind of I want to use an iPhone. So I'm going to click on the iPhone one because I want to create an iPhone project. If I double click on it, a little window opens up. If you have an older version of Xcode, you're going to have a bunch of windows with no integrated interface. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to have to go hunt and find the windows, and you're going to have to pull them down from the menu. Because over here you're going to have interface builder as, I think it's in the window directory, but I'm not sure. You actually have more items up here because you have less items in here. And you actually have to open the interface builder. You have to open the source code editor, and everything's not linked together like this. So here, if I want to open it, I just click on it, and it opens it up in the window. Oops. Yeah, that's iPad. Click on it, and it opens it up in the window. So if you double click on it, it'll open up in a new window. So I'm a double clicker, so I had that bad mistake. I have to think single click, single click. All right. So it shows you the flow of the application. We're not going to be covering nibs in this workshop because nibs are way old. You might have a nib actually in your 3-point-something version. And nibs are interface configuration files that go along with the XIBs that give you the controller. So that's too old to worry about. Automatic reference counting. What are we looking at? Well, we have an LLVM 3.0 compiler that handles memory management for you. Brand new feature of the current iOS interface for 5.0. It does it for you. So it's not a garbage collector. You still have to throw away your own garbage. But it keeps track of how many pieces in memory are still being accessed. And when the item becomes 0, it can clear it out of memory because it's not being used anymore. So it can kind of keep track without you having to release everything. So if you were in the earlier class, we allocated some space for the application. We created an object, we put it in a pool, we called it a pool. It was our allocated space, and then we had to drain the pool. And then sometimes we can release this object. We don't have to use release anymore. So it cuts down on the amount of memory stuff we have to worry about. So it's just a brand new feature of iOS 5. Most of your projects these days are going to have iOS 5. Not to burst the bubble on anyone who has a previous API version, because you can still use it for this class, but you have to do more work. iOS 5 really cut down on for the memory management part of it. Unit tests, as I mentioned before, is JUnit equivalents. JUnit is for Java. So this is not JUnit, but it's equivalent unit testing kind of platform. So we won't be discussing it, and this is the workshop. I modified this for my workshop, so don't worry about it. When it says in this workshop, in this class is what it's referring to. But if you take a QA class, you'll read all about it, actually. And it's not a bad idea to be familiar with it, because a lot of developers will use test cases. You know, it's not a bad idea to test your program units. It's testing each unit, so it's testing each class, each module. That's part of the big picture, making sure that there's no bugs or unimplemented features. So if you click on the iPhone storyboard file, for those of you who have the right thing here, or click on the XIB file that you have, because you're only going to have one. You're not going to have two options. You're not going to have, as we saw before, you're not going to have view controller on the bottom here either. You're just going to see a main screen. And I'm going to try and make this compatible for all versions, but let's see what happens. So it shows a blank view. It looks like you're on a sheet of graph paper on the background. Looks like graph paper. That doesn't do anything. It's just a fancy background. You can move it if you want. Well, can you move it? Yeah, you can move it. But the background is not doing anything for you. It's just the background. It's just so it's not, you don't have white on white. So there's two buttons below. You have the first responder and you have the view controller button. So without clicking on it, let's see, get it. Here we go. I have view controller shows up on the bottom. If you click on it, now I see I have first responder and view controller. For those people who don't have this version, you're not going to have this, but you have the files, so we can still do this, but what you're going to do is backwards. So in iOS 5, they rotated around the steps. You can still do it. There's still a library. You can still drag and put stuff on, but the way that you connect the items, you can do it in multiple different ways with 5.0, which is a little bit easier, actually. So everybody's going to go out and upgrade their systems if they don't have 5. The current version. I can just see this after the lecture. Okay, so find a label. Where are you going to find a label? If you're on the previous version, you got to open up the library, and the library option is going to be up here. It's going to be up in the window, along with the interface builder. Because when you click on the XIB file, it's going to open up the interface builder for. And now I'm going to start changing my terminology. I'm going to say for older users, which means you're not working on this API, you're working on an older version. Older users, double click on the XIB file. It's going to automatically bring up the interface builder for you. Then you're going to go up in the menu, you're going to click and open up the library. The library is going to look like this down here on the bottom. You newer users, the library is already open. It's on the bottom of your screen. Your library is going to have many options. It's going to have controllers, windows, and components and things. You're going to find that you're probably going to end up searching on this stuff. The search button is way on the bottom of the screen, very hard to find. Older API people, it's easier to find. It comes up right up at the top, or it's really nice actually. This is, they made it, everything's smaller in this version. So what are we going to do? If we follow along with our instructions, we're going to drag and drop, put a few items on the canvas. So where's my PowerPoint? Here it is. So here's our picture. So in the X view on the lower right hand corner, we're going to scroll until we find the object label. Objects. That's just what it's talking about there. And then we're going to drag a label. Well, okay, object label. So in the object, I'm going to search on label, and I'm going to drag a label. So on the bottom of the screen, on the bottom, way down here, I can try and make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to type in a label. And you know, I just thought of something actually. And I press return. Oops. There we go. Because I pressed return a couple of times, it actually put it on the canvas for me. But what I'm going to do is came up with my label here, so I'm going to drag my label and put it on the canvas. If you press return a couple of times, it will, like I did a few minutes ago, it will put the label on the canvas. I just thought of something, however. You're in luck. The older API people. Last time I taught this course, it was on the 3.4 version. And just how right now I'm recording this video, I did the same thing. So it's on the YouTube site. You'll see the same tutorial done for the older API. The steps are slightly different. So if you fall into that category, don't panic. most of the examples I'm going to go through are just upgraded versions of the old examples. So you can find the old examples on the YouTube site. So I highly recommend it. It's probably going to be under Hello World and probably at the beginning of the whole class is actually out there. So you can go back in time and see the older API. So you can drag and drop, and you see up here you see the width and the height. This is actually the same, so I'm going to make the label a little bit bigger. So drag a label to the blank view. Double click on the label and add something on it. Change it to a Hello World. Do the same thing in the iPad. Well, I'm not going to create the iPad. I'm just going to do the iPhone. But you could do the same thing for the iPad. So if you double click on the sucker, it should allow you to edit the label. Hello, there we go. And if I just start, I'm going to type here Hello World. And it should auto resize, which it does. If I come over here on the right hand side, I can actually open up property windows for the label. If you're on the older version, you have in the interface builder, you have a separate window. Actually, if I see the labels here, it's called the inspector. I had to look at the label here to kind of get the name for it. The inspector window is going to give you all of the information about the object that you've dragged and put on the canvas. So in here, if you put your mouse over the itsy bitsy little buttons, and no, you're not missing something. It's actually very small over here. I think it's very small. The guy here that says show the attribute inspector, this is the one that has the text label that I just put on there. It has the size, number of lines. I can change the color of the label, the font, and stuff like that. So this is giving me the attributes that are associated with the item that's clicked on. So if I click on another item, I clicked on the window a few minutes ago, a few seconds ago, I click on this item, it changes. So it changes per the item that you're clicking on. It allows you to, instead of using the GUI, you can use the window to change the attributes that are associated with it. Alright, so we got that far. Run the project. Okay, let's run the project, make sure it works. If I run the project, I'm going to get a window, it says Hello World on it. And I should be selecting iPhone Simulator, I do. Hello World, that's the results you're supposed to get. Okay, perfect. We're going to do a little bit more than this though. Closing the simulator. Alright, so we're so far so good. Now we're going to add a couple buttons to the view, because this is kind of stupid, it just says Hello World on it. So let's put some buttons on there and have it do something. So what am I going to do? Well, I actually can't remember the name of the buttons. Actually, I do, but I'm going to call it the round rectangular buttons. But I'm just going to type in button on the bottom of the screen here, and round rectangular button is the ones I want. We have a bar, button bar items. We've got spaces. Just take the round one. So put two of them on here. When you're dragging it around, you can actually see the alignment. And for those people who just took the Android class, you're like, oh, this is nice. Oh yeah, much nicer, isn't it?
Fancy design.
It's like look at this. I don't have to guess. I don't have to pick a layout and decide which kind of layout I want or anything like that. And I can just, it's so much nicer, isn't it?
Until we look at the Object-C code.
Until you start looking at the Objective-C code. Then you're going to be like, wait a minute. Then you're going to start crying. Alright, so we dragged a couple buttons. Hopefully you did that at the time when I was talking there. So let's see, you find the rectangular button, you drag two of them on the view, which we just did. We double click on one of the buttons and type in hello. Double click on the other one, say we're going to put goodbye on it. And then we're going to run the project and click on the buttons, and we're not going to see anything happen. So we're going to double click and I say hello. And this one over here is going to say goodbye. Goodbye. Hello and goodbye. And it's kind of interesting that the buttons turn a color when you click on them, so you know which one's clicked on. Is nice. It's really nice, actually. It's hard to tell in the Android what you actually got clicked on. So I'm going to go ahead and click Run. And for those guys who took the Android class, I'm doing a workshop actually in September. However, I'm going to do a phone gap. It's an API, it's a framework that's built on top of the Android API that allows you to create iPhone, iPad, Android, BlackBerry, you name it, application using HTML, JavaScript, and web development tools. It's like, and it's actually pretty slick. I've been playing around with it. I'm going to do a whole workshop on it, free workshop on it. Because you guys, for those people who just don't like it, don't like the Android kind of interface, it's not bad. You actually convert the code into native Android code as well. The framework allows you to, well, you have to upload it to a site, and then it gets converted for you. And then you have the APK file, or you have the Apple file. But it's a high-level interface. It creates a bigger application. But for those people who like to play around with it but just can't stand Objective-C or just can't stand on Java, just don't want to deal with it, it's nice to know how to do native application development, but no, there's frameworks out there, so you don't actually have to if you don't want to. It's actually, a lot of people are doing it for prototyping of apps and stuff like that as well as building apps. Because you build one project and it works on everything, which is why people like it. Because it's a lot of work to create a separate iPhone, a separate Android, a separate BlackBerry, and then what new platform comes out, PhoneGap created a new interface for it. Anyway, so that's hope for people who just can't get it. But it's not a bad idea to be familiar with what's going on, because in order to understand PhoneGap, you have to understand what's going on underneath it. Otherwise, you don't know XML, interface builder. What's that? And you're still using the Android APIs, and you're still using the Eclipse for Android, and you're still using Xcode. You're still using the development tools, but you're working with a higher level abstraction. You don't have to actually know anything about programming. So anyway, it'll be a workshop coming up in September 15th actually. So just thought I'd plug it. Alright, so now we have two buttons here. They're not doing anything though. We don't have any functionality associated with it, so let's do that. So I'm going to exit out of here. Still in my interface builder, or my storyboard builder here. Run the project, click the buttons, nothing happens. We have to tell it to do something. So click on the assistant editor. Looks like a tuxedo. So way up here on the top, so okay, here's the interesting thing about the views. So this is all file related, and we have buttons up here that's going to just, show the log navigator, show the breakpoint navigator, all coding related. Show the file, the hierarchy, show the symbol navigator, yada yada. Over here is all about the XIB. It's all about the storyboard, the interface. So it's kind of logically organized, but unfortunately it takes a while to learn the system. So over here you have everything associated with the view. And then up here on the top is where you're changing the big picture. So if I click on this tuxedo over here, I get an editor that shows up along with my storyboard. If I click on here, I've gone back. If I click over here, I get yet another view. I'm getting a now no editor, but I'm getting, because no file is opened. But I'm loading a revision. No, I don't want to do that. Let's just put it in here. So what you want to do is click on this thing, and the thing looks like a tuxedo. Actually, let me just close this here, because now I've messed everything up. I want my iPhone back. Oh, I don't want that. Hold on, I've messed up my view. How do I close this? Close. Close. Man. Alright, hold on. I want to get out of this view. Oh, in the world. Okay. Close this and I click on this. I should get this back up. There we go. Ah!
You can click the standard
I'm sorry?
standard editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know, but I'm trying to get this away. I'm trying to close this XIB interface. Ah! I did it. Let's see. No, I want to get the maybe it's on the bottom. I shouldn't have done that. The problem is I'm still getting used to it. I just upgraded a couple months ago, and I'm still getting used to this interface. Here we go, storyboard, iPhone storyboard. Don't want this one. I clicked on this guy over here, which gave me the issue. It's loading revisions. Okay, I don't want to do you. Okay, hold on. I have to fix my interface. If I could just stop clicking, I'd be in better shape. I'm trying to get rid of this window here. Can't believe this. Close it. I know, here. I don't want that one. I want the graphical. I don't want that. I'm getting the source code instead of the graphic because I clicked on this button over here that exchanged the source code, changed the view, the picture of the window with the button, and gave me the XIB. It gave me the source code for it. So I'm trying to get rid of the source code. The editor's opening up correctly. I just can't get rid of this. I need my storyboard back. See, I'm getting my iPad storyboard, no problem. Well, I guess I can work on the iPad now instead of the iPhone. Let's just do that. So let me go ahead and put some stuff on here just to. All right, I'm gonna create my iPad and use my iPad instead because I can't get that back. So I'm gonna put a couple buttons on here real quick. Put a label on here. I can't get the GUI back for some reason. So this one here says hello world. And what does this one say? Hello. You can do this actually as well. You can actually set up your iPad, which means I have to remember when I run the simulator, I have to simulate it on iPad. So, goodbye. All right, so I have hello and goodbye. Now I'm going to follow the instructions again. And this time I'm going to click on the editor tuxedo up here. Opens up this window. Don't click on the one next to it because it converts your graphic into the source code for that particular control, for the particular view, and I just don't want that. All right, so I guess I could run it just to make sure everything's kosher with this. I'm going to run it real quick just to make sure. I'm going to get the iPad that shows up this time. Yeah. Here it is. So I got my buttons. Okay, very good. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to follow the next step without clicking anywhere else. So click on the little tuxedo in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. What you're going to end up with is it's going to link. In the next step, we're going to link the view object to the view controller. So over here, I have the viewcontroller.h file, which is what I want up here. So on the right-hand side of the screen should be a viewcontroller.h file, which I see. So single click on the Hello World label, and then while holding down the Control key on your keyboard, left drag to the view controller. All right, so the Control key is next to the FN key. It says Control on it. So the label, hold down the Control key, and you see this little blue thing that shows up. Oops. You have to put it in between the interface and the end. If you put it out here and you let go, the blue line goes away. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you see what I'm doing. I'm kind of doing this a couple of times so you can hold down the Control key. So if you don't hold down the Control key and you go like this, the whole label moves. So if you hold down the Control key and you go like this, and you try to oh, it's not working. How come it's not working? Because I'm not putting it in between interface and end. So you do that, and a little window pops up, and now you can give it a name. So let me make sure I follow my instructions here so I don't deviate. So when you hold it down, you get the little pop-up box. If you don't get the pop-up box, make sure you're going in between the right spot. So you got a new property that you've just created. So you have to give it a name. So label it Hello Label so you can easily recognize it. This step will allow us to change the UI label. So if I put in the little name here box, I'm going to put in Hello Label. This is my Hello Label. Leave it on storage, leave it on weak. The connection, it's an outlet. An outlet, We have interface builder outlets, IB outlets. Outlets are nothing more than the GUI component. We'll say it that way. It's by definition, it's outlet. It's kind of like a widget. Yeah, describe what a widget is. It's a component. It's a thing you put on a canvas. It's an outlet. So they call them outlets or widgets. Actually, iPhone calls them widgets. Excuse me, Android calls them widgets. So now you might notice that if I put my mouse over the plus, you should see a plus symbol. It's hard to see it actually, but oh, that's not a plus. No, it's a plus when you put your mouse over it. So you get a ton of these objects in here, and you go, which one is this? Which one is that? Well, you hover your mouse over it, and it says label hello world. So I can actually kind of say, oh, that's the one I want. So in the code, you see it actually inserted, and this is the interface that we're dealing with. It inserted a template of, it's a definition, a function prototype essentially, a method prototype of a property. And the property that we created used weak because we got that from the property box that we created. It's an IB outlet because it's one of those widgets out there from the interface builder, which is what IB stands for, and it's a UI label. And that's the type that we have out here. And the label is identified by the variable that we gave it, the name of the label, which was hello label. And it's a pointer. Don't worry about that. We're going to get that. We're going to get memory. Well, you're going to get that in the Objective-C class if you're taking that soon. But just take it as a pointer to a hello label. It's just nothing more than a declaration of this, declaring a variable. Okay. So we got that far. We have the label now defined. Remember, Objective-C is an extension of the C language. We have the interface, and then we have the end symbol. The @ symbol denotes that the Objective-C is a keyword. So this @ says its interface is a keyword. @ property is a keyword. It's telling the compiler, hey, I have a property. I have an interface. So we have the interface as the start of the class. Interface class name with a superclass. And here we have interface class name is view controller. That's the name over here. View controller. And it's inherited from UI view controller. UI view controller is an object that's created from UI. This is the UI, the view that controls the objects. So it's we can change the inheritance, but we get it automatically. So this is given to us when we created the project. Anything in between the declaration and the end is part of the class. It's part of the definition. So let's talk about this property thing for a second here. We have property, weak, non-atomic, IB outlet, UI label, hello label. I just went over a few seconds ago, but here's the formal definition for it. The property is an attribute of the class. This is very object-oriented. Properties are generally what properties? Data members. And we have member functions or messages or methods, and we have properties. So property describes the object as in terms of its data. Getters and setters are automatically created for you. So those of you guys who are in the Objective-C class, this is what I'm talking about and how it's applied towards the iPhone and iPad is that instead of saying, get label, set label, because in the normal world properties are private, and because they're private, we have to access them through public member functions or public messages, depending on what language we're speaking. And so we automatically get setters and getters. So we don't have to actually write them in the code, set label, get label, all that other stuff. So those people who don't know about object orientation have no idea what that even means, but that's what that's talking about. Non-atomic has to do with the adding mutexes around your setters and getters. What is it? All right, so only one runs at a time. It keeps consistency. Think of this as inter-process communication, where we're not going to have any race conditions with values changing. We're not going to have any deadlocks. It's going to essentially, when a setter is using, the getter's not going to work, and the getter's going to wait for the setter. So we have mutual exclusion that's going on in terms of the use of that particular property. IB outlet stands for Interface Builder Outlet. And again, you come up with your own definition for outlet. I call it a widget. So I don't know. Interface Builder still exists in iOS 5, but we're using Storyboard feature instead. So remember those XIB files we saw in the project? Those are Xcode interface builder files. You double click on them, you lit up the library manually, and you have the same thing as a storyboard. This is nothing more than a storyboard, but it's all separated out. And as we'll see in the next project, when we connect the storyboards together, when we connect the windows together, we end up with more than one that's all part of the storyboard, instead of having, you know, XIB1, XIB2, XIB3. So kind of like Android, where it's all separated out into XML files. Storyboard all together in the same, when we can connect the screens together, and it's actually kind of cool. Okay, synthesize hello world. Where is synthesized hello world? Well, we're in a different one here. Hello labels, not synthesized. Okay, well, this creates the accessors and the getters for us automatically. We don't actually need this for this particular project, but we didn't use the keyword synthesize in here, but don't worry about it. But if we did, it would create the setters and the getters for us automatically. So you can write your own if you want, but in general, there's no reason to do this. I mean, there's no reason to write a setter and a getter if it's going to do it for you. So the keyword synthesize, we'll see in the next project. We'll see in another project. We'll do it for us. So link the rest of the buttons together. So how are we going to do it? Link the hello button to the hello controller.h. Link the goodbye button to the hello controller.h, just like the label. When you're done, you'll have two properties. Now switch the assistant viewer to the view controller.m. So let's link our labels first. So I'm going to put this actually up here a little bit. Make this interface look a little bit better. So I'm going to click on this guy, I'm going to press the control key, and I'm going to put him in here. And I'm going to call this hello button. And click on this guy here, control key. I'll put him underneath here, I'm going to call him goodbye button. Connect. Just leave all the default settings on that. Now if I click on here, I can see that's goodbye, that's hello. Okay, that's good. So up here on the top, I'll give you a few minutes for those people who are still doing it. At the top of the screen here, we can switch now. So what we just created was the definition of those items in the .h, which gives us our interface. So up here, if we click on here, we can see we have a view controller.h and a view controller.m. We can switch back and forth without having to double click over here. If you're in the older version, you've got to actually open up the other file. And if you're in the older version, you have to do this in the opposite order. It does not support the dragging of the item from the view to the code. You have to put the item in the code manually, then drag it to the view and connect it that way. And I will tell you, it's a lot more work. They really improved this with the current version. So now you guys are going to, oh, I'm definitely upgrading now. Switch to the view controller.m. And lo and behold, we have the code in the .m. Whoops. And the .m, I'm going to make this, I'm going to clean up my screen a little bit here. Without, I can't make it smaller, can I? Ah, yes I can. There we go. So if I switch it to the .m, we have a touch up inside method that might be associated. So touch up inside is the event that's going to occur if you touch a button and you lift off while holding the button down. This is if you had your finger on the phone or on the iPad and you touched it and you lift up inside. It's kind of like button click actually, but you're not clicking it because you don't have a mouse. So this corresponds to the user tapping the button. So right click on the hello button. On the far right hand side, locate the touch up inside. Then left drag it over to the view, to your view controller.m file. Because we're writing the implementation now. The implementation is going to be for the action that's controlled by the button for a touch up inside. So notice it's going to create some code, do the same thing for the goodbye. So over here, this is kind of like why I wanted to, oops. Oh no. No. Come on back. Come on back. Ah. I wanted it on the same screen again. Okay. Now I'm trying to get my screen back. Here we go. No, not this again. Come on. Ah, here we go. Where's my iPad? Here it is. Ah, there we go. All right. Seriously, I don't have this problem with the Android. Okay, here we go. It's because they cram everything all into one little screen here, and the views are just, I'm blind. I can't see the little differences here. Right mouse click. So click on one of these buttons and right mouse click. And then select touch up inside, and click on this little button right here. And drag it over here. Anywhere you want. So now I'm going to call this button, this is goodbye touch. The type is ID because it's an object of a generic type. The action is what's essentially the method that's going to run. You can actually drag more if you want. We're just going to do one. These are all of the messages that are sent. So these are the send events. So we have a did end on exit, edited change, did someone change it, the touch canceled, the touch down, the long touch, the short touch, the drag touch, all these different types of things that you can actually do with that. So we have over here, if I can figure out how to get my screen, you know what, maybe if I, oh, there we go, that's better. Make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to try to make this code section a little bit bigger without messing it up. Anyway, if we do the same thing, we put the mouse over here and we see that the button here is for, and now we have an IB action. So before in the .h file we had an IB outlet. So in the .m file we have actions. So it's button action, essentially, that's going to be occurring here. So do the same thing for the other one. I have to somehow figure out how to get my other, get this view to show up. No, just move it over. Here we go. So I'm going to put this guy here. I'm going to right mouse click on him again if you missed how to do this. I clicked on the button. Click on the button, right mouse click, or do it on your touchpad. This is why I like a mouse actually. And then touch up inside here. Very small, here it is. Touch up inside. I'm going to put it underneath here, insert the action here. I'm going to call this one hello touch. There we go. So my code looks like that. Hopefully yours looks like that too, or something similar to it. Touch up inside. Okay, good. Now for our IB actions that we just created. So we created 2 IB actions, and we see the IB actions over here, hopefully. So the action satisfies something that happens when you do something, for example, pushing up on the button. Keep in mind, depending upon which one you dragged over, you might have a different effect depending upon how you're using the GUI. It's all event driven. This we have to type in here. So because I can't cut and paste it, I can't cut and paste it from here because I'm going from Windows to the Mac part. So we currently have some empty messages, and the empty messages says sender on here, although my screen is a little small when it comes to this window right now. But in here I have IB action, goodbye touch, and then it's sender, which means it's going to send a message to the GUI. And what message do we want to send the message? Here's the currently empty messages that we have, and the type of the method takes on a parameter that's of ID. The word ID is kind of like a pointer for those people who are not in the Objective-C class. I talked about IDs actually already. But it's a generic object type. It's a type like integer, float, double, but it's generic. It can mean anything. It's dynamically allocated. So ID is used a lot in iPhone and iPad because we don't know what it's going to be until it actually runs. So we're going to set a parameter. What is it going to be? Well, picture, graphic file, text string. We're going to send it a text string because we want to change the label when we press the buttons. So I'm going to change the UI label. So IB action here, I'm going to say self. In fact, here I'm going to go like this. This you have to type in. So on the one that says hello pushed, that's the second one for me actually. In between the opening and the closing brackets here. Let's see if I can do this. Make this a little bit bigger and see if I can do this. Leave everything in there and just type in self dot, what was the name of my label? Hello label. I can actually select it from a drop. So you'll see the screen comes up for you automatically, which is nice. So hello, oops. Self dot hello label dot text is equal at hello pushed. And what did I do wrong here? Nothing. Good. No issues. So you can tell if you've got error messages, warnings, and things by the status on the top. Well, why it's way up here, I have no idea. I'd like it to be right here. But go ahead and do it for both. Actually, now I can cut and paste. I can actually do this. Copy, paste. So if you took the Java class, you know what self is, hopefully. Or if you're taking a C++ course. Self is me. Self is the current object. It's kind of like this, actually, this self. And what we're doing, we're saying hello label.text. We're setting a text property of hello label that we get automatically with the property that we've dragged and dropped into here. Label's got text associated with it. We set the property text to hello world. And it's going to be equal to, and then this is an @ symbol is a directive. And the directive means that we're going to tell the compiler to create a string for us. And you just have to get used to the @ symbols. Objective-C has a ton of symbols in it. So we put the @ symbol on here and we go, hello, oh, pushed. Oh, well. Well, actually, this was goodbye pushed. So, pushed. Didn't read. Well, see, I told you I can't type. So this one actually is going to say goodbye pushed. Goodbye pushed. I'll change this one to correct my typos. And this one says hello pushed. So what we're doing is creating a string variable. We could actually cut them up here if we wanted to in the actually in the interface.h file. We could set string or ns string or whatever. Hello pushed, and then another one says goodbye pushed. If you take two variables and then send the variable as a text for the label, but we're just going to manually set it here. All right, so we've set the two buttons. So self refers to the view controller class, which is what I kind of just mentioned a few minutes ago. But it's like this. It's equivalent to this in Java for those people who just got out of that class. So we defined the property hello label earlier. The text is the property of the UI label that we can set, and the @ symbol at this text is the ns string. Same as the Objective-C class. Actually, it's the ns string object that uses the UI label, and the UI label is going to display it. So run the program and then push the buttons, and you'll see the UI label change. Is it that easy? Can it be that easy? Let's see. I'm going to run it. And on the top, I can see that I've got no issues. And I see that the build was successful. So those people who just got out of the Android class are going, it is that easy. Where is it? Here it is. Let's see if it's that easy. Well, it's easy if oops, because I'm using the iPad now. Hello pushed, goodbye pushed. Oh, that's smaller font. Hello pushed, goodbye pushed. I have to change the properties. My hello and my goodbye had two different. I probably messed around. I probably clicked on something. That's what I'm thinking, because I got two different fonts going on here. So, your functionality works, I hope. No? What's wrong?
It's messed up.
What does it say?
Because before I edit the button,
Yeah.
and then I remove the curves, and then it's causing a lot of problems like that. I have to restart it.
Yeah, I started from scratch. Yeah. Because, actually now that you've done this, here, actually I'll do it from, watch this, I'll do it from scratch too. But I'll just change it around a little bit. Oh,
So
man.
just,
Project Organizer.
So don't manually delete the codes.
How did you manually delete it?
It was in
Oh, you deleted
when
code that was in the .h file or the
when
.m?
we linking the buttons.
Ah.
And then I was like, I don't like this button. And I just remove it, and the code still exists. And I just go.
Oh, let me show you real quick. I'm going to try and duplicate your problem. So I'm going in single view. I'm just going to type in here number 2. Number 2. This is why I delete the projects. This is why I put them on the universal storyboard. Okay, next. Right here. Yep, next. So I got a new project. Let me see what you did here. You clicked on the storyboard for iPad or iPhone? I like the iPhone. iPhone. There we go. Oh, don't double click. Okay, so I got to. Where's my storyboard? Ah, here we go. And I went over here. You went over here and you put
The buttons there.
label. For those people who missed any of the steps, I'm going through them all right now. Label. So I gotta say, yeah, hello. And then you put buttons. Button. And I got round rectangular and I put a button here.
So you put 2 like this.
Okay, here I got a label, so I'm gonna delete a label. It shouldn't have a problem. As long as I delete it from here. If you delete it from the code, you're going to have a problem, probably. It's a syncing problem. You just have to refresh the project.
I did it on the view controller.
Ah, that's what the problem is. If you're going to delete a component, delete it from here, it automatically syncs up with the .h. It will remove it from the .h. If you remove it from the code, you have to refresh the project. Actually, if you saved it, closed it, and reopened it, it would probably refresh it for you. It didn't? Okay, well, I'm going to put another button up here. I'm going to say hello. Hello. Goodbye.
Go back to the storyboard view.
Oh, how did you do that?
Right click on the storyboard.
Right click on
Open as, and then Interface Builder iOS storyboard.
Oh, thank God.
So you don't have to skip that part.
Ah, thank God. Yeah. Phew. That's a hard one. And then we're gonna essentially click on the editor here, right? Got that part? We did this. Take that. Controller. These are all the steps we went through. We called it label. Hello label. Good. Yeah. Then we rotated this here. We took this, put it on M. That's an important step. If you drag it and put it in the H, you're putting the implementation in the interface. And then we're going to take hello, press the control button, drag it somewhere, call it hello button. You got this far? Yeah. And I'm going to try and delete it when I do this and see if I can delete it.
So you just drag and drop?
Yep. Well, you press the control button.
So the same thing as doing with the header.
Yep, same thing you did with the label. Press the button, press the control key on the keyboard, left mouse click, and if you have a 2-button mouse. Yeah. Well, that's why I like the mouse, by the way. You might want to consider, it's so easy because it's so right and left intense. And the keyboard, I don't like using the touchpad because of the whole, my fingers get confused. This is goodbye. Goodbye. Hello. Now what did you do? You went like this and deleted one of these?
No, I just did it on the header and then the whole project just goes crazy.
Maybe you deleted some of this other stuff we didn't talk about yet. Unload, unload, and all the other stuff that's in here. These are all the life cycle. Remember the life cycle of the Android object? We have a life cycle of the iPhone object as well. And it's a little bit clearer, however, because in here we have little methods that says, did the view load? If it didn't, do something to recover yourself. I can load it again. Did the view unload? Did the view, and then here we have our auto, for those people who are in the other class, we have the auto memory release and stuff like that was going on. So what we did here is we just added the code here. I think what was it? This. No, it's self dot hello label dot text is equal to the @ symbol some text or hello, and then oh, that's goodbye for goodbye. And then here's the one up here. Let me just cut and paste. Copy.
Do you always have to use the @ symbol? For
Yes, you do. Right before the string, if you're going to create a string constant, you need to use that @ symbol for a string. I'm going to get into the syntax a lot more in the next couple lectures. This is a hello button. Hello button. So you got that far?
Yes.
Now you just run it. This one should give me an iPhone instead of an iPad. Now I know the trick of getting it back too. No, because I ran the simulator. See, that's the only part I don't like about this. This is the simulator for the iPad. But you notice something? I don't have anything on the iPad. iPad's empty. Ooh, so now I gotta close the iPad. I gotta change the simulator to the iPhone because I created the iPhone storyboard. Because believe it or not, people you see it online all the time. It comes up blank. It's like, hello, did you add it to the right storyboard? Now we go. Oh, my text is small again. Oh, you know what? Because I cut and pasted. What happened here?
Oh, so it's based on your label width, and then the text will.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I didn't make the label big enough. Yeah. You're right, actually. And that's why the text auto resized to a smaller font. So now if I run it, this is good troubleshooting, actually. Now if I run it, it should hopefully work. Yeah, I made these labels a little bit bigger than the last ones I wrote. There we go. That was why my text was resizing on the previous time I wrote this as well. I didn't click on anything. It was the label that was too small. That, I think, is a debugger issue. It should like truncate it and keep the same font. It just thinks too much. It thinks a lot more than the Android.
Maybe for the layout, because they don't know if your label has to be fit into a certain size.
Correct,
So it
yeah.
doesn't run into other issues.
True. Alright, we made it through Hello World, at least. So you can just throw away the project now, you don't need it for anything. Or you can keep it for prosperity's sakes. Alright, so let's see if there's anything else in here I forgot to tell you. Nope, let's try a tab controller. We have enough time to get through tab controller, actually, because it's really easy. So now we're going to open up Xcode, so close it down, save it, close it down, do whatever you want. I'm going to throw it away. I don't need it anymore. These are two really good projects. Not really. I can just recreate it if I want to. I'm going to click on Xcode, and now I'm going to click on Create New Project. You don't want to do this in your same project. Create a new project. And I'm going to pick the tab controller option, which is right here. It says tabbed application. Because really what we're going to do now is examine the storyboard and see what that's all about. Because now we're actually going to see. And we're only going to do the first part because I'm going to save it because I don't want to rush through this. And then we'll finish this up next time. So don't throw this project away. Keep this one. And when we're done with it today. Okay, so I'm going to press on next, and the same routine as before. I'm going to call this tabbed application. There we go. Use the storyboard, use the automatic reference handling. Let me just make sure. I'm pretty sure. Create a new project. Tabbed application. Yep. Okay. Set the options here. Okay. Don't use the testing. Go ahead and click on next, but keep a storyboard and automatic reference counting. And I'm going to put mine on the desktop again. I'll probably just accidentally delete it, and then I'll have to recreate it, but that's okay. Whoa, now I see I have a lot more files. And now what I'm going to do is click on the iPhone storyboard. Be patient and wait a few minutes. And I'm going to go, whoa, what just happened here? This is the storyboard. This is what the storyboard's all about. When you have one single window, you can't really see this concept. It's just like the XIB file. If you have the older API, you don't have storyboard. You don't have this feature. What's this going to do for you? Run the application and you're going to see what it's going to do for you. Which is nice because you don't have this on the Android either. The ability to create a project like this. That makes sense. You have to do it manually. Oh, not the iPad again. I'm going to remove iPad completely. I don't like the iPad view. It's too big for the screen. iPhone. I bet there's probably a way of setting the default project type in Xcode. Here's my iPhone, the one I wanted. Tab view. Look at the bottom of the screen. I have first tab, second tab. Actually, I can put little icons on here too. It's nice, actually. You know how many lines of code? You know how much work this is to do in Android? For those people who just took it, you have to create two XML files. You got to create the intent for it to switch between the views. You've got to not only that, but then you have to create the controller, because the controller is not given for you automatically either. So that what happens when you click each one of these things to run the intent. And then plus, this looks so nice. Yeah, yeah. You don't have it separated out in this format. You actually have to create this abstraction yourself, the tabs. We saw a tab view, actually. And I put the tabs on the top of the one we saw. In fact, there's a couple of examples out there on the internet that have the tabs on the top for iPhone as well. So you can mimic both. You can do this on an Android, and you can do this on a, you can do this same effect that you have on the Android, you can do on the iPhone. Okay, so I'm going to close the simulator off here a little bit. And let's play around with the tab view program. So let's see what we got going on here. So click on the storyboard, we see it. So you notice that the tab bar controller is shown. Tab bar controller. Here we have a first view controller. This is where I really hate this interface. Second view controller is down here, at the bottom of the screen. And then I have this thing called a tab view controller. This is the tab view controller. So if I click on it, then I see the first responder and I see the tab view controller. Oops, there we go. So this is the main screen, the controller, and this is really giving you the model view controller kind of component here. And over here, I have a first view controller that is associated with, I shouldn't have clicked on it, iPhone, here we go. The first, I accidentally clicked on it. The first view controller, that's controlling this view. The second view controller, that's controlling this view over here. The second view. I should stop myself from clicking. I should turn off the click functionality. And then we have the controller bar. So on the top, we can actually switch between the files up here by clicking on the, just the same way as we did before. We can get to the controller file that appears up here. If we click on the tuxedo up here, editor, we can actually see now we have the second view controller that's automatically going to come up because I clicked on the second view. If I click on the first view, I'm going to have the first view controller. If I click on the view controller, I don't get anything. Because we have to program that. So the images that are in here are regular old PNG files. So we can drag and drop from the desktop or from another directory, and we can put our own. Here's first image and second image. So remember on there we had one was a circle and one was a box. We're actually required to have images in the tab view. So what you can do is take and drag and put some images in there. Make sure they're compatible, certain sizes. Here's our first ×2. If we increase the size. Remember the ×2 button where it makes an iPhone app look good on an iPad. When you press ×2, makes everything look bigger. Well, we can actually change the resolution size of the icons to do that as well. And you don't get that. You don't get that in the Android platform either. So let's see what we're supposed to look at here. So take a look at this stuff. It also shows the child views associated with tab views. In fact, this is those little squirrely lines here. If I go back to the iPhone here, I hate this interface. You see the squirrely line. You can click on the squirrely lines. Squirrely lines are going to bring up. There we go. First view controller. It's going to bring up the first view controller here, which is the first view controller, which is this guy here. Let me make this one a little smaller too. The problem is it's such a big screen, unless you have, and I have a small little 13-inch. It's nice when you have a huge screen and you can actually just open it up and look at everything. I know. Well, which one?
Your
Oh, I know. Oh, okay, that computer. I thought you were talking about. I'm like looking for the option here. It says, where is the iMac on here? Where's the look like an iMac button? No, you're right. I could just use this guy over here. You're right, but yeah, I know. No, I need to get used to this one because this is what I have at home. So again, so if you're upgrading your computer, get a big screen because it makes this easier to look at actually. So you don't have to keep readjusting it like I'm doing. All right, so take a look at it. Go ahead and run the project. We ran the project. We see what it looks like. Let's add a new class called a third view controller. So what we're going to do is just play around with the controllers and link them up and see what functionality we can do. So we had 2 controllers by default. What we're going to do now is add a third. So we're going to have 3 windows instead of 2. So now we're going to go into the library and pull out view controllers, tab views and things like that. So we have components or objects in the library for navigation. We have them for GUI elements like buttons and labels. So everything is in the library. So on the left hand side, click on the tab demo folder. Well, ours is called something else because I called it something else, tab application. And then select file new. So we're going to add the class file. So this is just an exercise. We're not going to do anything with this. We're just an exercise to see how we're going to add stuff. So if we click up here, if you're in the 510 and you right mouse click and we go new file, we're going to have this little screen that comes up. The little screen that comes up is going to give us some options to look at. So if you haven't done that, go ahead and bring up that little screen. Your screen, you're clicking on this up here instead of it being a file folder. If you click here and go new, I think it also works, but this is going to give you the file options. You can also do it up here, file new, file. If you can't navigate this screen at all. All right, so pick the type of file. Well, we're going to create an Objective-C class that we're adding to the new view controller. So Objective-C. So we have to make sure that we're in the iOS Coca Touch. And we're going to see Objective-C class. If we're down here, we're also going to see Objective-C. But we're going to get different inheritance. Because we're going from NS to, well, we'll see what happens here. We're going to go to Coca Touch for iOS, Objective-C, press next. Now it's going to say UI view controller. We can click on here and we can select different classes. We have table view controller, UI view so these are all things that we can inherit from. So we're adding a new view controller, so we're going to select this class. And then we're going to select a UI view controller, which was the default actually on that window. So for the class type in third is the name, so third view controller, and select the combo box UI view controller. So UI view controller, I'm going to type in third view controller. So because I have a first and a second view controller over here. Good. So I'm going to make sure I'm following the steps here. I don't think I'm going to have to select targeted for iPad with XIB or the interface. So the ID will change the names, get naming convention. Leave the tag for iPad and the XIB unchecked. Because if you click with XIB for user interface, it's not going to put it in the storyboard. We want it in the storyboard. We want to be able to use it from the storyboard. Because the XIBs and the storyboards are like 2 separate worlds. And we're not going to the target's not going to be for iPad. Because I'm going to run this on. If you're running it on the iPad, I'm using the iPhone storyboard. So it will go to the iPhone storyboard. If you pick the iPad target, it'll add it to the iPad storyboard. So it depends on which storyboard you're using. I'm going to click next. And I'm going to select, I believe, next. So we're going to pick just create it. Create the default options, click on the create button. Now you have a .h and a .m file that's new. So I'm going to click on create. And over here on the left hand side, put it on the top on my screen. It might end up on the bottom depending upon how I have things sorted or what I've got clicked on. I actually clicked up here before I went to this window, so that's probably, but I believe the default location is on the top these days. So now I have 2 files that were added. I have thirdcontroller.m and thirdcontroller.h, and over here I had second controller, first controller, so now I have the third. Oops. Jeez. Hello, there we go. So now, so you now have two files that are controllers. Look at the files, they're basically skeleton classes, and they're ready for the developer to write stuff in. So we're going to add another view controller to the storyboard. So, because we have the H file and the M file that we're going to attach to the view file, the view controller that we're actually going to put in the storyboard. Because the concept being that in our storyboard, oops, let's go on a storyboard here, each one of these guys is attached to a separate set of .m.h's. They're separate view controllers. So we're going to add a new view controller to the storyboard. So we're going to actually click on the objects in the view controller in the library there. After you add it, it will not be linked to any view because it's just there. So let's just go ahead and drag it. So view controller, I'm going to put it in here. Well, I'm just going to stick it, see what happens if I just drop it on top. It goes on top. I don't have any room for you. Let's stick you in the bottom. I need to do the iMac. Alright, let's just take you here. Move you somewhere where I can see underneath you. Here, I'll just move you down here. Alright, well, I'm gonna kind of overlap. Well, he's not connected to anything. See, all these other guys have like little wires connected to them. This guy's not connected. He's just on his own, so we have to connect him. Actually, what happens if I go like this? I can put him underneath. And then make this guy smaller. No, but I can make the windows smaller. There we go. Solution to the problem. Now you can see the big picture. It's smaller, but you can see it. These guys are connected. I have to connect this guy. I've added him. Because now I'm going to have 3 buttons instead of 2 buttons is what I'm trying to accomplish here. Okay, so after you add it, it won't be linked to anything on the views. Now the new view is all alone by itself out there. Notice that the storyboard does not have any arrows pointing to it. The developer will make the association as this view could be a stub view for any views shown. Actually, it could be attached to anything, or you can just leave it out there, actually. It doesn't necessarily have to be attached. So link this view controller to the tab controller. So you hold down the control key again. So the control key is going to basically be our linking mechanism for everything. Left click, same as before as we did for the GUI items, and drag from the tab controller to the new view we just added. So you're going from the tab controller and you're linking it to the view. It tells the storyboard that the view is going to be accessed through the tab controller. So here's our tab controller. Pressing the control button, pressing down on the right mouse button, and I'm dragging him this way until this guy, see how when I put him in, he highlighted or turned blue? And let go. And it's going to say, what's the relationship? Well, the relationship is going to be a view controller. We want to put him in like the other view controllers. We could do a push, a model, a custom, but those are different options. What we want to select is the first one, relationship. That's an interesting looking way of doing that. It's kind of like Visio, you know, like when the lines, you know, you ever use those graphic programs and the lines move all over the place? Interesting looking view. Now we have, what time are we looking at? Okay, we're good with time. That's good. We have this third view in here, which is kind of cool. And so, just like the picture is showing, we're dragging it from here to here. So it tells it that we have the view. And select the relationship as the option. The label this before we forget. We need to label it, which we haven't done yet. So you can click on the text, change this to say third. We do not have any graphics, so we don't have to. We can add graphics if you want, but we don't have any graphics. You'll need a graphics for standard iPhone and Retina and iPads. If you don't have a graphic, okay, so there's no graphic on here. But if you ship it without a graphic, you're going to have a problem. I have to make this bigger so I can actually see it. Hello. If I click on the item label on the bottom here, it's kind of small. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. I can type in third. Third, because this is number 3. And over here is where I can click on the, and I can actually add, if I go into the inspector, remember the inspector over here? I can actually put a image in there. Here's the image right here. In fact, let me give it the image. I'll give it the, let's give it the big one here. I got the big guy in here now. If I drag and dropped, if you want to put some special images in here, play around with it, all you have to do is drag them in here from the desktop. Just drag them over, put them in, or add it to the file that's on the in the folder. If you go out to the folder, here's an example. Here's my folder here, tab view application. Tab view application. Here's those files right here. Just add it to the file, add it to the folder, and it'll automatically be part of the project. Or drag it and drop it and put it into the Xcode project. So now we've changed the label on the bottom. I've actually changed the icon. So you don't have to put a graphic in unless you run it. Unless you deploy it to a phone or an iPad, you don't have to actually put it in. So let's be more specific about the class. So now we're going to link the class file up with the view controller. Because remember we added that new class in there, because each one of those windows has a class that's associated with it. So you're going to left click on the new view in the storyboard, and on the icon on the right hand button here, click on the identity inspector, which is going to be on the upper left. So so we're going to select it. We're going to right mouse click on it so we have it. Oops, here it is. You want to make sure you have, when you do this, because here's the problem, you're going to end up over here accidentally, and you're going to get different stuff over here for this view. And you're going to click in the middle of the window and you're going to think, okay, I got it, but I really have this one still selected. So what you want to do is click on the border on the top, and you want to make sure you have that blue background on that window. And then over here we're going to click on the first one here that's going to be for identity. Oops, hold on one second. Let me make sure that I can get this big enough so I can see it. Alright. No, actually, I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to do inspectors, what I want. And instructions are, let's just go back up here for a second. It's this is this one. My class isn't coming up right. File type, location, interface builder. Okay, let's see. Hold on. Identity. Localization, target membership. Maybe I want the controller. Hold on one second. That was the view. Let's just clicking all over the place. Okay. All right. So in the inspector window, I'm looking for the custom class. Is what I'm looking for in here. And oh, it's because I'm clicking on the wrong one. Obviously, it's this guy here. Yep, here it is. All right, so click on the correct view. They moved, my arrow got moved over on this slide here. This arrow is supposed to be above the third icon, not the first. Need to correct that. This confuses me. So click on the identity inspector, which is in the upper right hand side. Move it over to this one here, not this one. And notice how the class is currently on the UI view controller up here on the top where it says custom class. It says UI view controller. You need to make it associated with the third view controller, which is the subclass of the view controller that we just created and we added to the project in the first step. So there's a toggle over here. I made this so big, it's, oh well. There's a toggle over here. If we press on here, we see third view controller. So we've associated this one over here with this class. And actually what ended up happening is that we've seen it now in the window. I have to figure out how to make this. I drag this, make this a little bit bigger so I can see the window. Third view controller. So now when I click on here, click on the second view controller. That's the first view, the second view, and the third view. You can see the names of the files are changing up here. So I've associated the class that I created that I put in there that's extending view controller. And so now up here I have the options of the third view controller M and the third view controller H that's associated with this GUI here. this window here when I click on it. And then, oops, it is lowered. Hold on a second, I have to go find the bottom of my screen here. Here's the second view. If I click on it now, I see I have second view controller up here, which is what I want. Hopefully we made it that far, and we make it that far. Okay, good. We're almost there for tonight. So here's the step-by-step if you're going to do this at home later. Go ahead and select the third view controller from the drop-down menu. Remember third view controller, all the methods and properties for the third view controller. You can replace the first view with the third view if you want now. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace the first view controller with the tab view controller. Click on the first view, hit the delete button, and you're going to remove it. So we're going to take the first one. This is the last step, by the way, actually. We're going to end it very shortly. Let's see if I can make this. Well, okay, take this first one up here, press the delete key. Oops. Wait a minute. I deleted the controller. That's the tab controller. First view controller. Oh, hold on one second. Why didn't mine go away? There, now it's gone. Okay, I had the wrong thing deleted. I should still have my two view controllers here. Ah, there we go. I can make this bigger. Here we go. Third. I have the third and I have the second. Where did I delete that one too, or do I have my? Ah, here's my second. I have my second and my third. I thought I deleted both of them for a minute there. I deleted one of them because we're going to replace one with the other one to show you how they're connected. This is just an exercise. It's really not going to do anything. So click on it, click the delete button, it gets removed. So drag a table view controller if you want. From the object library, drag it to the table view. Good spot for B would it be right where you had the other one, other view controller. So I'm going to say table view controller, I'm going to replace it with another one. So we're just replacing it. You don't necessarily have to do this to understand the concept, but table view controller. Yes, we're going to change the controller to a table view, which is going to give us a slightly different interface. It's going to give us a table instead of a view, which is going to essentially, that's why this step's in here, is essentially going to show us we have different types of controllers. So embed the navigation controller. So from the Xcode menu bar, select Editor, embed in navigation controller. So editor, navigation controller. Oops, I'm going to just, wait a minute, embed in navigation controller. Puts a navigation controller embedded inside of the table view controller. Don't really need to do this for the project to work, actually. That's kind of it's just basically demoing another control that you can do. You can embed items inside. So I added something a few minutes ago. I embedded a embedded navigation controller. We're not really going to use it for anything. And notice that the view controller is added to the storyboard canvas here. Check it out. This is what we did in the previous slide. We took and since the navigation controller is in the container, there's a relationship between the navigation controller and the table view controller. Actually, I put it inside. Oh well, because I had it clicked. We can actually embed it into the project as well. So the rest of this is actually nothing more than just playing, deleting more things, playing around with it. What I want to do is, what we're going to have to do is hook up the screens next. But I think what I'll do is I'm going to stop at this point, because in order for me to finish this project, I'm going to have to go through like at least half hour more worth of stuff. And some of you are packing up, I see this. Because it's getting kind of, but this is really a good stopping point, because here's what it's going to be able to do for you over the weekend. Play around with it. And if you're curious, this is the first lecture, download it, you'll be able to see the rest of it if you're curious about following it. Otherwise, go ahead and create some more objects and link them in here, like put 5 of them in here. Well, we haven't actually linked, but we need to link this guy now with this guy over here, because we have second and third. We're going to put 3 of them here instead of 2 of them, or actually we still have only 2 of them, but go ahead and experiment with a storyboard, experiment with different project types, and the more you play around with it, the more familiar you're going to get with the interface. And go ahead and click on items, drag labels and drag buttons, click on the items over here and change the attributes of them. See what you can do in terms of playing around with the GUIs. It's not a bad way of getting exposure. And what we're going to do is finish this project. So save your code, save the project, bring it with you, or if you haven't done the project, do it to this point. And then if you had problems with it, so get it to this point. We're stopped on slide number 48. What we're going to do is finish this project on Monday and then go into another one that's going to do a tab view. It's going to be a tab view project with a list view. And then what we're going to do is, after that, build another one with images, another one with video, another one with basically try and build as many projects as we can, utilizing all of the different features of the interface. But the main concepts and the objective of today was to get familiar with the storyboard, with the files. We're not going to learn very much about Objective-C programming in this course, but I am going to touch upon a little bit of it, as I've done already with the IB outlet, the IB actions, and stuff like that. But I can't really teach you Objective-C and iPhone development all in one time, which is why it's separated out into 2 different classes. So hopefully, as we go through the next couple more weeks, we're going to catch up. We're actually ahead on the Objective-C because we've already covered a lot of stuff. Then what is end up happening is this class is going to catch up with that class, and then we'll be starting hopefully to write some code, minimal code. We're not going to do a lot of intensive programming in this class, but you should be able to do it if you're taking the Objective-C class, because then you'll understand everything. So, okay, I'll leave you with that. Thank you for staying, and see you on Monday.
I have a question about
Yeah.
the third video controller class that you added to the